presents NASCAR Inside Winston Cup.
We're back. Winston Cup cars and Busch Grand National. I was getting to it.
It's a good start.
Winston Cup cars and Busch Grand National cars at Richmond, trucks at St. Louis. We'll all be right back on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. We'll determine who actually ran into who.
Hi, welcome to another jam-packed edition of NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. Alan Bestwick here in our Charlotte studios. In the 4+ years we've been doing this program, I can't ever remember us having as much to do in an hour as we have planned for this next hour, but usually as these things go, the whole plan goes out the window at this very moment in the show. When I introduce our expert panel of drivers to review the weekend's events for us, we welcome to the program Michael Waltrip, driver of the nation's Ren Chevy for Matei Motorsports, Johnny Benson, driver of the Lycos Pontiac for Tyler Jet Racing, and back from his sojourn cross-country one, Ken Schrader, driver of the M&M's Pontiac, who started 34th and finished 12th on Saturday night. Good run.
Yeah, I did my normal qualifying deal, and we got a lot better as the night went on. We adjusted, and got to 10th in the last lap, but I didn't do it real gracefully and got paid back.
There you go. The other part of our introduction to Mr. Schrader is Kyle Petty's ride.
We had an awful lot of fun on that. We got to ride with him for 3 days. My wife Ann rode for 5, and so much fun for a good cause.
And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later on in the hour. Mr. Benson started 23rd and finished 25th. Had a little wrinkle in his plans early on.
Right to start with. We felt that the Lycos Pontiac was going to be pretty good, and I normally run real good there, but kind of backed somebody when they knocked off to the wall, so
we will see that later.
Yeah, we knocked the toe out pretty bad, bent the ball joints and A-frames, and it was a pretty bad deal. So we just pretty much stayed out there and tried to stay out of trouble the rest of the day.
Alan, before you go to Mikey, can I say right now that my spotter Keith Barnwell from Hickory, he never said anything about Mikey. Okay, Mikey.
Mikey started 38th and finished 19th, and the reason Mr. Schrader's making his disclaimer is the following footage.
5 laps into the race, I'd already caught Schrader, driving up on the outside of him here.
You're just barely in there.
All the way up to your back tire right here, and I'm saying, oh, he's not going to give me enough room. And bam, ran me into the wall. That is how you treat a fellow panelist on the show. Can you imagine what he does to people he doesn't even know? I was so distraught. 10 laps in the race, I've wrecked my car. My steering wheel went from being 10 and 2 to 1 and 3 or 4. No, 1 and 6. No, 7.
1 and 8.
1 and 8.
It moved a lot.
Messed it up.
Yeah.
But then later on, I hit the wall again and straightened it back out.
There you go. That was not the only highlight of Mike's weekend.
Yeah, I had a bad weekend.
Friday night in qualifying.
Now, are you showing this?
Now, this is my fault here.
This is your fault?
You see what you don't understand? Let me explain to you what happened here.
Oh, you ain't done?
I know, but my tire, when I...
Oh, yeah.
You're on the straightaway. You're not supposed to be doing that.
I know,
See, you breaking way early.
Well, now watch this. Let him see now.
Let me tell you what I did. When I got up in the dirt, when I got up in the stuff, there was all kinds of crap on my tires, and I was trying to clean it off.
If you wouldn't have backed up and got that run, you couldn't hit that wall that hard the next lap.
That's what I explained to Bobby. I wouldn't have been able to go near that fast when I hit had I not done that. So I had a good car for qualifying, and I messed that up, and so then my heart was just set. I said, I'm gonna go to the front in this race. It's gonna be a good night for us, and then it wasn't. 19. And so see how excited I was, and yeah, I was ready to roll, and Schrader took it all away from me on the 10th lap.
That's his story, and he's sticking to it.
So I'm going to be in protest the next hour during this show. So Schrader, you better be on top of your game. Make one mistake, buddy, and
yes,
I'm
sir,
all over
buddy.
you.
I'm worried.
All right, we're going to review the races from Richmond and St. Louis. We got a lot of news headlines of the week to talk about. Plus, we'll venture to another question of the week as well. Stay with us. Time to check some of the news headlines now on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. Beginning with suspensions and fines handed down by NASCAR this past week. That's crew chief Peter Suspenzo, who was suspended for a month last Tuesday for the altered fuel found in Jeremy Mayfield's car at Talladega. In addition, 151 drivers and owners points taken from the team, plus owner Michael Craniff is fined 50 grand. Then Thursday, Suspenzo was fined 25 grand more for the car being too low after their win at California. That's Kevin Hamlin, Dale Earnhardt's crew chief, fined 2 grand last week also for an unapproved part found in pre-race inspection at California. Now we go to qualifying at Richmond on Friday night. One Rusty Wallace took advantage of a late qualifying draw in cooler conditions to take his 3rd Bud Pole Award of the season, topping what was a very tight qualifying session. The big story Friday, in my opinion, was the return of Jeffrey Bodine. Not just returning, but doing it in pretty good style, laying down the 4th fastest lap in qualifying for his first race back since that terrible truck race crash down at Daytona back in February. Crew chief change at the Cal Wells team. Doug Richard is out. Wells citing philosophical differences. Joe Garone, the team manager, is calling the shots for driver Scott Pruitt for now. And a couple of much sadder headlines to report in the news this week in NASCAR racing. First, Herman Hickman, the longtime publicist for the North Carolina Speedway, passed away this past week at age 73 after a pretty long illness. Hickman, considered one of the pioneers of race public relations and promotion in the Southeast. He was with the Rockingham track for many, many years, had a lot of friends in the sport, and Herman will very definitely be missed. And finally, a tragic accident on Friday you've likely heard about by now claimed the life of young crew chief Christian Lovendahl, the man who headed preparation of P.J. Jones machines in the NASCAR Busch Series for the David Ridling team. Lovendahl and company returning from Richmond to North Carolina after not qualifying for the Richmond event Friday. A traffic accident between the airport in Concord, North Carolina, and their team shops in Mooresville. And unfortunately, the 27-year-old Lovendahl was killed in that accident. He was Mark Martin's nephew and considered to be a very bright young talent in the sport, and a lot of thoughts and prayers to his friends and family and team this week. Kind of hard, as much as we all travel in this sport, airplanes, cars, vehicles back and forth to speedways, and I know this sounds like kind of a goofy thing to say, but kind of surprised we don't have these headlines to deal with more often. But boy, what a shock that was when word came back to the racetrack about that.
Yeah, you know, it's probably so much safer now than it was when all the teams were going to full distance all the time in the vans. But, you know, thousands of miles every year combined between these teams, and actually we've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mark Martin found out just before the race started that his nephew had been killed, and that was quite a load for him to bear as he headed into that race. So our prayers are with that family and Mark and his family.
Let's turn our attention to some of the other headlines of the week now, starting with the fines and suspension to Peter Suspenzo. Reaction from all of you. Was it enough? Was it too much? Your thoughts first on the deal from Talladega and then on the deal from California.
Yeah, which deal?
Both of them.
Well, I don't know if we were surprised. We knew that there would be a penalty. Of course, as it gets through the garage area, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So.
Yeah, you mean the rumors before it happened. What are you doing?
Before it happened.
He had a hair growing out.
I had a hair growing falling off.
I got it.
Thank you.
You know, so we weren't surprised that there was going to be a pretty good penalty coming, but maybe.
Here's what I think.
Was it enough?
Curious.
Was it too much?
I think it was
I think
enough,
fine.
and I think it
fine.
was. I don't think it was too much for sure. I think that it was an appropriate fine. You could tell they've thought a lot about it. I think that if people are going to cheat, you know, or I guess it's called cheating. If people are going to cheat.
What do you mean you guess this? What do you mean you guess this?
Yeah, I can't even define it. But if that's going to happen, there has to be a penalty, and it has to be stern enough to where everyone knows not to fudge the rules, because it's very easy to get out there and try to find an advantage, and that one's definitely against the rules. Unical gives us pump gas. That's a very easy thing to tamper with, to make yourself have more power. So you've got to make sure you clearly understand the rules, and if you break them, there's going to be
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to do something.
Moving on.
What is that word?
Peter,
I have no idea what you're trying to say.
Repercussions. Thank you.
Peter Suspenzo is my daughter Dorothy's godfather, and what a disappointment to us to find out that someone would try to run fuel additive or run low in this business.
Okay, quickly, very quickly. Qualifying Friday, the draw was everything. The late guys that ran, a lot of them ended up in the top 10. Agree, disagree?
That's
Didn't
usually
help
the
all
case.
everybody.
It
was
helped
a
us,
lot.
but it always does tend to pick up speed late in the day.
And finally, in our news segment, Mike has some news headlines for us.
Yeah.
Mr. Waltrip.
Yeah, Jimmy Smith has bought into Jim Matei's team. It's now going to be called Ultra Matei Motorsports. That's Jim there's very successful or truck owner, actually, and just a great person to be around. He's been with us in the sport forever. He knows all the people that make it up. He understands what it takes to be successful, as you can tell is evident by his great truck team effort. And I'm real excited about getting him on my side. And talked to all the guys at the shop this morning. Jim Matei was there, and we met with them, explained to them the goals of the new partnership and what we're looking to accomplish out of that and how it's going to work. I think all the boys on the team are comfortable with Jimmy. Jimmy's main concern is making sure Bobby Kennedy stays there and continues to guide that ship. And so I believe it's going to be something that's very smooth and is going to make our team better, and that's exciting.
There you go. And you heard it here first.
And I was going to let him come here, but the last time I bought my new car owner here, y'all made fun of him for hiring me. So I told him he could stay at home, and I would handle it myself.
Okay, so our extensive look at some of the headlines of the week in the sport, and we're not done yet. We'll come back and get into our review of the Richmond race next.
It's a surprise to me, and I mean, tonight wasn't our night to win. You know, we had a third, fourth, fifth place car, but we obviously did some things on pit road and manipulated ourselves into that position, and we got to look at it and say, all right, this is what we did to get ourselves that win when we had a third place car, and try to continue to do that when we're not the fastest guy out there, and have good top 5, top 10 finishes. So, you know, I've seen guys win them 100 times this way, and I'm pretty proud of it, and I know Dad is too.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. win number 2 in just his 16th NASCAR Winston Cup Series start. Welcome back to the program. We review the Pontiac Excitement 400 from Richmond Saturday night with Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Ken Schrader. 22 lead changes, 9 caution flags, 22 of the 43 starters finished on the lead lap, and let's move right into some of the early action now. Jeremy Mayfield will start off with in victory lane in California last week in the wall, 8 laps into the race this week.
Not sure that's all his fault there. Just looked like 33 got pretty loose and caught his left front.
got help getting
You
up.
get run in doing the left rear, see if you don't get pretty loose.
Yeah.
Try to go in there when there wasn't really room, for sure.
Yeah,
Let's take another look at it.
You were rolling the dice there.
Yeah.
Anyway, good thing Jeremy was there, otherwise Joe would have been in trouble.
Okay, Jeremy finished 38th, 77 laps down after getting shuffled into the wall there pretty early in the event. Several drivers experienced a very similar problem Saturday night. We illustrate at lap 44 with one Todd Bodine exiting turn number 4. Our Mr. Benson here had a pretty good look at it.
Yeah, he cut the tire down, and man, just
Golly, it's just...
it didn't look like I hit him that hard. And then I thought, like Mikey had with his car, his steering wheel's here, and then all of a sudden now it's turned way left, and it just knocked the toe out an inch, and it just happened too fast to even start to avoid it.
And see, you're turning left there already. I mean, you got the car bound up right there at that point, so there's just no way you could miss that. That's
Why?
bad.
I had the brakes locked up.
We saw people have that same problem about 7 times Saturday night. Why? Why
That
right
is a
fronts?
good
Tight.
question.
Well, I think a car's a setup. I mean, we practice during the afternoon when it's hot, everybody's real loose, and they're afraid they're going to be too loose. They tighten the car up a little bit, and you get starting a race, and the car's tight. You're not getting a chance to, and a lot of camber. I mean, it's a little bit of a lot of
But also you could say that people were saying on TV maybe it's the brake temperature.
Brake heat.
But that's too early in the race.
Yeah.
That's 40 laps in. There's not going to be enough heat there to melt that tire 40 laps in. If that was the case, 60, 70 laps in, everybody's would be blowing out. So
You might even had a fender rubbing on tire.
I mean, you don't know what happened. It's weird though, but Johnny's right. The cars are real tight there because you get so much grip. So maybe that's it. You know, Schrader?
I don't know, but you guys really do sit close together.
I know, isn't it fun? Let's get a good shot of it.
And notice that Kenny stays as far away
I'm
from me
staying
as
away.
possibly can.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing he's between us.
on this one.
First half of the race was dominated by one Rusty Wallace, who led all but 13 of the first 200 laps. Never usually by a whole lot. First Steve Park, and here Mike Skinner applied plenty of pressure to Mr. Wallace, but Rusty somehow managed to stay out in front.
Rusty was the car to drop the green flag for a long time, but you know, something just went away, or else he was really good and everyone else adjusted up to get just as good. But here we see another one of those problems with the tire, and Robbie Gordon is in the wall hard, but he had a pretty good fire going up in the front, so it was
continued on pit road.
Yeah.
What about that guy? He changed that tire with it on fire.
Yeah.
That's getting into
Now
your work.
watch the tire carrier come around.
Yeah, I'll just carry this over there. Yeah. That's pretty neat.
I'll leave that for you to deal with. Thank you very
A
much.
lot neater at night, too.
Yeah.
In a hurry to put it
On
out,
this
though.
caution here at lap 117, a little rusty mistake here for Jeffrey Bodine. Pit road was closed at this moment. He was third at the time.
You got to watch for that pit road sign at Richmond. It's kind of tucked away a little bit, so you can understand how that happens. And plus, like you said, he ain't been in a car in 3 or 4 months. So
He hasn't raced basically since last November in Atlanta.
Right.
So he fell to 31st at that point. Lap number 172, trouble in turn 4. Mike Bliss is underneath Kenny Irwin coming off the corner.
That had to be a right front tire there. He too abruptly went to the right.
Yeah.
You don't lose the front end at that point in time that quickly. So you think maybe Mike had a problem with a tire there. You can see here Earnhardt's flying aces getting him in and out of the pit in a hurry. Those guys are getting the job done on pit road.
Yeah. And Rusty in for a pit stop as well. The big story of this caution, though, was that Mr. Bodine decided that he maybe couldn't make it to the finish.
Yeah, and these guys lose 2 complete laps and the majority of a third. He came out right ahead of Rusty and drove off. It's pretty amazing that Todd got in that car, got comfortable, and was able to run off from the leaders, and then wound up doing it a couple more times and making up all his laps and coming back to being a real tight battle there for the 10th place late in the race.
Yeah, he finished in 13th position, making up all of those 2 and almost a third laps. After that set of pit stops, Rusty would become merely mortal, and Tony Stewart would become the superhuman in the field. Stewart passing Wallace for the lead just past halfway, lap 209, and would lead most of the next 150 laps.
We know Tony Stewart gets around this place pretty good, you know, for the last race that he won here. And Rusty, like I say, his car at the beginning was extremely good. Tony and those guys worked on their car and got a little better, and like I say, got out front there and led for a long, long time.
Did conditions change so drastically that all of a sudden Rusty's not any good anymore and here comes Tony? I mean, what happens there?
I don't see how they changed that much.
I think everybody adjusted up better. You know, it's hard to make an adjustment on your car when you're the dominant car because you don't want to mess it up. It feels real good. You're driving away from them, but everyone else, you know, knows what they need to get to you. And I think that's what happened. The track was a lot different this race because it was not resealed for the first time. And you saw the cars running 3/4 of the way up the racetrack was the actually preferred groove. To run on the bottom and really hook the bottom, which you had to be able to do to pass someone, was really hard this time.
Point leader Bobby Labonte had a pretty tough night. Didn't start that way. He was running in the top 10. Dale Earnhardt and Mike Skinner racing side by side for position in front of him. Bobby decides they're holding him up. He ran 3 wide with him for a full lap. This was about to be the second lap.
Not to be.
And it didn't work out.
No, he got loose there on the bottom. Like Kenny said, it's real tough to squeeze a car down on the bottom and keep it hooked up. And whoa, don't go back up on the track. No, he keeps it down on the bottom. But Bobby had a little bit of trouble working that out right there.
His words on the radio to the team, he had 2 words to say to him.
Oh, we can't repeat those.
No. Sorry, guys.
No, again. He did the right thing here. He could have probably tried to correct the car, but he was going to get in the side of
Yeah,
these
and he
other
pulled
two
her down
guys.
in the infield.
So he chose to try to go down to the inside and not get anybody else involved.
On the caution for Bobby's spin, Bobby, Dale Earnhardt, and Terry Labonte pit, along with about 9 others. And this will put them back in traffic as Stewart and Rusty Wallace and most of the other leaders stay on the racetrack. So we watch those pit stops here. Bobby Labonte falls to 25th in line as a result of the spin in the pit stop. Then, just after the restart, another caution waves. This time, it would be Chad Little who would have another one of those problems we've been discussing. Look ahead.
See, that's no way. That's a brake temperature failure there, because or an air pressure or a camber. That's what I don't understand. That happened just
That's a fire, though.
that happened just a few laps after the restart. What could have caused that?
Well, remember, he didn't pit there.
Well, it's still, when you ride around, your pressures go down, and it hadn't been that long since the last caution when he did pit.
But this gave the guys that had pitted just a few laps ago, excuse me, track position.
Rusty Wallace, Tony Stewart, and others on pit road. So Dale Earnhardt will go to the lead. The Labontes, Terry and Bobby, who pitted on the previous caution, will come up to the front. And there you see Earnhardt second in line behind Kenny Wallace, who stayed on the track to become the driver at the tail end of the lead lap. And that is that track position will play a factor in the rest of the race, which we will discuss after we take a quick break for a commercial. On the way to the break, a reminder, Thursday, 7 Eastern Time. My guest on This Week in NASCAR is Mike Wallace, the point leader in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Got a question for Mike? Leave it on the GM Fan Forum line at that phone number. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is celebrating in the winner's circle on Saturday night at Richmond. We've been reviewing that event for about 10 minutes with Michael, Johnny, and Kenny, and still haven't seen Dale Earnhardt Jr. He'll come into the picture here very shortly. We just saw his dad and the Levantes get track position back through some different pit schedules. Dale Earnhardt is leading after the restart. Tony Stewart is mired back in traffic, but not for long. After we watch Terry Labonte take the lead from Dale Earnhardt, we will see Tony Stewart rocketing his way back up through the field.
And what about young Kenny Wallace in a Square D Chevy driving out in front of the leaders there? He makes up his lap right here and gets back on the lead lap. Okay. I say that because he's one of our panelists.
I was going to say, it's,
what's that got to do with the picture?
To do with what I was asking you to talk about, but
well, that wasn't on that. There he is. Yeah, Tony Stewart rocketing by. Move on.
Okay, what's next?
The rest of the video here of this pass for the lead first.
Well, like I said, this is hard to do, to be hooked up on the bottom like that, because Dale was good on the top.
What about those cars under the lights? Aren't they pretty? Look nice, don't they? That's why racing is so exciting at night.
More trouble for the point leader. This time he would be the victim of the situation. 50 laps to go off of turn number 2. Watch Dale Jarrett and Jeff Gordon have a little discussion.
Now, I love this. You don't see two superstars like this doing this stuff. They're going to wreck each other for sure. Gordon says, I'm wrecking you, I'm wrecking you, and then here comes poor Bobby Labonte. Gets his car.
He didn't catch that wall.
Oh, right along the inside wall. Check this out.
I'll just pass him now.
Oh, man, and can you believe it didn't tear up Jarrett's car? He went on to run third, and Bobby Labonte jumped right over top of it.
What did Bobby say to the crew that time, Alan?
Go down and tell. I never got the report back on that one. But
Two words.
All right. Second in points, Mark Martin. After Bobby's problems that dropped him back to 26th at the finish, Mark appeared to be in position to reclaim the point lead. It wouldn't work out for him either.
Oh, I know. Another one of those.
Right front failure.
And we're not too sure because Mark always has a car so loose that we're surprised that they'd have any problem up there. But
if you take all the facts of that,
not sure what's all
Isn't
happening.
that pretty under the lights over at night?
Under the lights.
I don't know. That's not so
Now, turning point of the race, the leader's pit under this caution.
This is big.
Tony Stewart leaves his pit. Watch Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets into Tony Stewart, cuts his left rear tire down. But as we see Dale Jr. coming out here, he's got his wheels cut left right now. There's not a lot of room.
No, that should have probably hurt Junior more than it did Tony.
Well, watch the crew members for Jeffrey's car here. They come around the car, and he's got to dodge those folks, and then there's plenty of room over to the right for Stewart. So you can't hang blame, and we're okay with doing that.
Yeah.
You
we would do
hang,
that if it was.
You can't hang blame on anyone on that.
When you're going down pit road, when you're exiting pit road, and you see those cars up on the left side, knowing that when that left side drops, they're coming. You got to allow plenty of room. And not saying Tony didn't, but it's by no means Dale Jr.'s fault.
Not enough.
Not enough.
Yeah. So now Dale Jr.'s leading after Tony has to pit to get that left rear tire replaced and falls back to 22nd in line. Terry Labonte and Dale Jarrett are chasing Jr. into the final laps, and this is where I want to talk more about that inside line, outside line stuff, because basically, Junior had to protect the outside instead of the inside, right?
Usually you don't have to protect the outside, but you can see the difference in the color of the track there, and the sealer still works very well, and the outside groove was fastest, and he knows that he doesn't want to give him the good groove, so he just stays
very
up high.
few cars that could get the bottom and make it work. Tony Stewart was one that could. He could have gotten underneath Dale Jr. and passed him, I bet, because he showed the ability to do that all night long. No one else really did. Well, you said you said it wasn't no way. You're not saying Tony didn't leave him enough room. If he didn't, well, how'd he hit?
Tony wound up 8th. Come from 22nd to
Finishing
8th
order
last
now.
30 laps.
Different winner streak ends at 10. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Who would have thought,
a rookie,
back in January, that Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be the first two-time winner this season?
Pretty impressive.
I want to even them out. A lot of people did. I wonder what that's like. You don't see that very often. Usually it's 440,910 or something.
Okay.
Let's move on. Let's get on to something else.
Yeah, what
fresh.
about the points?
Down through the finishing order.
Ricky Craven ran
Had a good
extremely
run.
good at start of the race.
It was good to see, too. He got up there and almost led a lap. Missed leading the lap by maybe a bumper.
Wow.
3 points.
78 points back to 5th.
Tight.
Look back through 10th.
Are we going to go farther?
Wow. Probably not.
Can we go farther?
No, not much
you go.
farther.
One more page, guys.
Another
One more.
news announcement
One more.
made today concerning the Winston Cup schedule for 2001. We talk about it when we come back next.
Sportsnet.
Back on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup to discuss the latest news headline in the sport. Announced earlier today in separate press conferences in Chicago and Kansas City, 2 new dates for the NASCAR Winston Cup Series schedule for the 2001 season. First, the Chicagoland Speedway will have both NASCAR Busch Series and NASCAR Winston Cup Series races on July 14th and 15th next year. That's the mile-and-a-half being built by the consortium of International Speedway Corporation and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Corporation in Joliet, Illinois. And then the Kansas Speedway in Kansas City, Kansas. Both the Busch Series and Winston Cup Series September 29th and 30th of 2001. Both of those races, it was announced today, will be additions to the NASCAR Winston Cup schedule, bringing the total to 36 point races plus the 2 special events for 2001. First, reaction to the announcements of the new dates.
I think that we're going to some great places. There's no doubt about that. There's good venues to be in and all that. But what's going to make it tough is us racers, we're going to race every week. We'd like to race every week, but it's going to be extremely tough on the crew guys to make a couple extra weeks during the year.
We're going into big markets, so 2 new big markets. I enjoy it being from the Midwest myself, but we're going to first-class facilities. Then I think it's wonderful.
I do, too. The only comment I have is eliminate testing. Drop that thing down from 7 dates to even 2 or 3. Maybe have a test at Daytona and one at Charlotte and forget it. And then if you got a rookie driver, maybe do 3 or 4 tests for them. Get rid of the testing where we go spend all the money on tires and engines to prepare to do it, spend 4 days away from home, don't get paid anything. It's not good for the sponsor.
It's all about money, isn't it?
Well, I'm just throwing that in there. But what I'm thinking is it's all about time. It's all about time, keeping the guys at home. You know, letting the guys not go test a lot.
You think we'll hear from your team owners and crew chiefs about test teams and road teams and shop teams now, because basically you're going to run from Daytona in July to the end of the season with 1 weekend off, somewhere in there, from July 1st to November. If the schedule comes out like I think it will next year, you're going to have 1 weekend off in that entire period of time.
And that weekend's Evelyn.
I meant from Winston Cup racing, Kenny.
Okay.
Unless you've got something to add to the schedule announcement today. Winston Cup race at Peevely?
No,
Oh.
no, not for 2001 for sure.
Looking at building a tunnel first.
Widening it, lengthening out the track too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Pull the
another old
tires.
inside joke. All right, take a break here, come back and review the Busch Series event from Richmond Friday night next.
Whatever you get.
This week's Castrol Flashback Fact takes us back to May 8th, 1964, when Bobby the Bunny is born in Corpus Christi, Texas.
NASCAR Inside Winston Cup is brought to you in part by the motor oil that provides maximum protection, Castrol GTX, Drive Hard, and Aquafresh Whitening. Safe to use every day for dazzling whiter teeth.
The victory celebration in Richmond Friday night after Jeff Green won the Hardee's 250. We review the NASCAR Busch Series event now with Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Ken Schrader. Race summary: 7 lead changes among 3 drivers. 25 of the 43 starters finished on the lead lap. The margin of victory fairly slim, and we go right to some of the highlights. Mark Martin was in the field, so he was the instant favorite, and in the early going, he did not disappoint, moving up from the 6th starting spot to lead by lap 24.
First, got to start peeking out on the top, too.
Yeah, it's pretty safe for him to go out there. Mark's car was just real dominant, and he was the first one to go to the outside and showed that the outside groove is going to be a very good place to be for the race.
Yep.
Any other thoughts?
No.
Nope.
Take this one short.
Yep,
Move on
let's
to
go.
next one.
Then we'll all just be quiet while we watch the rest of this video as Mark moves up to take the lead.
But Steve Park was up there and Jeff Green, and they were both.
Oh, so now you're going to talk after the video's over. Let's move on. Lap number 101.
Hey, like we said before, We never said we were that good at this, but when y'all wanted to do this show, we were the best you could get. Now, you do your part.
That's fine. Lap number 101. Trouble for Hank Parker Jr. Actually, a couple of problems. This is the first of them.
Oh,
Gets up and
Almost missed it.
Almost.
pops
grazed
the
the wall. You get up out of that racing groove, and we run real high there, so the groove's wide. But man, you get up outside of it, and all the rubber and chunks off the tires is up there, and you just can't get a grip of nothing.
Look at the stuff on fire dropping from underneath
That
the
is
cars,
not a
Robert.
good sign.
Okay. Just rubber, Johnny says. So this is problem number 2 a few laps later.
A little later in the corner, but it looks like
That's
they
a
hit a
worse
lot
hit.
harder.
Yeah, a lot harder. That'll do more damage there.
Yeah, that left the mark. That's pretty at night, though.
Spent time behind the wall for repairs. Finished in 33rd position. On the restart after the caution for Hank's problem, watch Jeff Burton back there in line.
That is the most catastrophic engine failure I've ever witnessed.
Coming out both pipes, not sure exactly what broke, but he sure did smog the track for
That looks-
all the way through 1 and 2 and down the backstretch.
That looks like
Piston.
what he did at Talladega that one time.
Yeah.
Doing
But he
that
kept
on the-
going, yeah.
Yeah, finished good.
41st place was where Jeff Burton finished in the event. Now, Mark Martin has led the most laps in the race, but now we get to the sequence that put him back in traffic and kept him from going to victory lane. Lap number 164, trouble on the back straightaway. It would be one Bobby Hillen. Watch the traffic jam off of turn number 2. Starts up with Buckshot Jones there, and about
Buckshot and
4 cars
Randy,
back.
imagine that. Those two having a little bit of a confrontation there. Bobby got hit in the back when he slowed up for Buckshot and Randy's little confrontation. Dick Trickle punted Bobby Hill and spun him around. They throw the caution, and this brings up the most important happening in tonight's race. Most all the leaders pit. Mark stayed out. Mark needed, he thought, about 50, 60 laps for his last run, but he also figured when he stayed out, most everyone would stay out with him. That didn't happen. They all bailed out on him. Now you see Mark and Park and a couple other guys who had pitted on a caution prior to that are on the track, and there's 20 cars in the pits.
Yep.
So when they come out, you know what that means? When Mark does pit, he's got to pass all those guys to win the race. Does it happen?
That's why he's on
We'll
our
come
expert
back.
panel,
We'll
ladies
see.
and gentlemen.
Right after this message.
About 30 laps
now?
later,
Oh,
no,
yeah. We're
please.
gonna see it right
About
now.
30 laps later, a big jam up in turn 3 brings out the caution flag again. Here's the big jam up. It starts off turn 2, and they don't finish wrecking until they get into the wall in turn 3.
Yeah, this gets real big. Anthony there spins Jay Sauter, and then as Jay goes up the track, everybody start to head down, all but one car there, and man, does he get a hold of him pretty hard.
That's pretty good.
That's big.
Bad wreck. You don't see 3 cars torn up any worse than that at Richmond. That's about as bad as it gets. Sodders, Grubbs, and Sawyers are torn to pieces. And that one's even on fire.
Yeah, must knock fuel pump off.
So Mark Martin comes down pit road here and restarts in 22nd position.
There you have it.
With
just like I
42
called
laps
it.
to go.
It's like I've almost seen this.
And it's also
Really?
tough is that your double start, double line restarts,
Yep.
and
So
everybody
he's-
racing side by side. You can run side by side there so much that Mark has a hard time coming up through.
Excellent
and
point,
he did
Johnny.
everything he could.
That is such a good point.
Mark could only get to 4th by the finish. Jeff Green took the lead when Mark pitted and then had to hold off Matt Kenseth to the checkered flag. And this was, again, where we saw the illustration of top versus bottom. We'll do that after we watch Mark trying to work his way through traffic.
And Mark's bringing Park along with him, too. That's another guy that got on the same pit strategy. Park did what Mark thought everyone would do. He stayed out with him. But unfortunately, you can see here, they've just got so much traffic to battle through, and it takes so long to pass these cars. Jeff Green is out on the clear racetrack, as you can see illustrated here, just moseying along, doing his own thing. And look at Mark back there fighting through all that traffic, trying to get to him, but just simply ran out of time, Alan.
They were coming.
Oh, yeah. He drove all the way up to 4th, but in the end, it was Jeff Green who had to hold off Matt Kenseth. Final couple of laps here. Well,
It's a pretty good race.
we're out of time.
Jeff held him off for Jeff's first win of the season, even leading points, but first win.
Kevin Harvick, 3rd place run.
Great run for that
Really
team.
good.
Jason Keller, 5th. That was a much-needed good finish for
A
Jason's
great run
team.
for Phil Parsons. He parlayed his pit strategy, which was a little bit different than either of Jeff Green's or Mark Martin's, to a 10th place finish.
Rest of the rundown.
Ron
and
Hornaday
the-
had a confrontation with the outside retaining wall and relegated himself to a 17th place finish.
Very good. Would you like to make any further comments here? You really don't
What
have any
about you,
idea what
Johnny?
we're going to look at.
No, it wasn't there.
Thank you.
Kevin Page got dumped during the first lap.
Yeah, felt bad.
That was a bad deal.
73 points from Jeff Green to Todd Bodine, 83 to Matt Kenseth. Busch Series at New Hampshire Saturday. Truck Series review next.
This week's Pep Boys tip of the week. Keep leaves and debris away from the front of your radiator. Blocking the air will cause your engine to run hotter.
Back on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup to do our third race review from this past weekend. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Ram Tough 200 from Gateway International Raceway in St. Louis. When NASCAR goes to make next year's promotional announcements from the Truck Series from this year, this will not be one of the races they include. It did not feature as much action as we're normally accustomed to from the Truck Series. Greg Biffle started on pole. Jack Sprague was second. Lap 7 here. This was about the top highlight of the race.
That was the only lead change? 3 lead changes among 2 drivers.
So somebody has to run into someone before you think that's a good highlight.
Yeah, you think crashing is good, huh? No one really wrecked hard. It was a terrible race.
What I said.
That's what you're saying.
I said there just wasn't much action in it.
Well, I was
three lead changes among 2 drivers.
I'll tell you what I like is when they shift gears. That's
They
cool.
shift again. I thought I heard a couple of them shift twice.
Yeah, on the front and the back. I saw that.
All right.
They would never make you or I do that.
No.
The only 3 caution flags in the race stat would have an impact on the outcome because teams had figured on taking on more tires than they would end up having time to do. First caution was at lap 9, so nobody stopped on that one. Second caution at lap 39 for debris on the speedway. This from the Coy Gibbs truck, which you see here being pushed away and back behind the wall. The leaders will pit, and what we want you to watch here is the difference in tire strategies between Sprague and Biffle's teams. Remember, they're only allowed to take 2 tires on under the caution.
Yeah, and I think this is a great thing about truck racing right here. It made them switch the deal up. Everybody took rights except for Biffle. He got lefts, assuming the caution would fly a little bit later. He would have fresh lefts, and he could put on rights, and he'd be set to go to the finish. That didn't happen. His left tires give up on him too, or his right side tires gave up on him too when the race restarted.
Leading us to our next piece of video, which is Biffle struggling with those older right side tires and falling back in traffic. We'll watch him wiggling and struggling and losing positions.
He just couldn't, I mean, his tires were wore out. It's that simple, and eventually he had to come to pit road, as did a lot of the good trucks, and then the caution falls like it does so many times before the leader had pitted, so that changed the complexion of this race. As you see, Biffle here, when he does stop,
just under the green,
gets him 4 tires.
This is round lap number 100. Just after Biffle's stop and several other green flag stops, a fright for them. They thought the caution was going to come out. Andy Houston lost a right front tire, but he gets back to pit road with only damage to his own machine.
Look, NASCAR does a great job on that, Alan. They try to make sure all the pit stops are completed before that yellow comes out. So Andy certainly was looking for a caution there, and a couple people were, but they knew the pit stop procedure had started. They wanted to get through it before they had to throw the caution.
Problem was, it was Biffle's teammate that caused the problem that brought out the caution and put him a lap down.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. He must have tried to get on pit road the lap before, you know, because he was going so slow. He wouldn't have been going that slow if he just simply ran out coming down the front straightaway.
Pit stops there for the leaders. Sprague's team takes right sides again.
Right.
Instead of lefts.
I think we showed that left sides or the right sides are more important than the lefts, and man, it's just so hard to get a hold of some of those racetracks, and he didn't want to make the same mistake that Biffle did.
Did you even watch this race? Do you have any idea what's going on?
I don't know, but Mikey just kicked me like I was supposed to say something. And I took my daughter to the go-kart track, or my son to the go-kart track, so I didn't really see it. But I'm really learning a lot watching you guys' in-depth coverage of it.
Now there are only 5 trucks left on the lead lap, and Sprague pretty much moves away and has things all his way. That's our expert panel.
That's a nice looking truck. He's shifting in there too, by the way.
No, he said he wasn't.
Well, that's because he didn't
Biffle
have a camera. He didn't want anybody in on a secret. See, that's what they try to do. They try to tell you they're not shifting, but then as soon as they get the camera, they can't deny it.
200 miles on one set of left side tires for Sprague.
How many times have I said lately how wonderful Goodyear is doing our tires? They're making that possible. That's 200 miles on a set of race tires. That's unheard of. And enabled Sprague to use just getting rights twice and make it to the end safely. It's a cost-cutting move for the teams by not having 4 tires every time the caution comes out. and then it's also a great deal for the competition, mixing things up a little bit, getting 2, getting 4, those types of things.
Good run for Jimmy Hensley.
Yeah, you saw him passing Randy Tolsma for second there in the final laps. And how about Tolsma? He's had a great truck several times this year. Finally, nothing bit him yesterday. He got it to the finish with a good run. Jack Sprague led 145 of 160 laps.
Rusty Wallace led 200 of 213 on Saturday night. You know,
It was
didn't
400
win.
laps.
Then it changes. I'm just saying, you can really see how the twist and changes.
Sprague moves around Andy Houston to second in the Truck Series point standings. They race in Memphis this coming Saturday. We're back with Question of the Week next. Time now for Question of the Week. Our Pelote Question of the Week this week from Asheboro, North Carolina. Wayne Coffey wants to know, why do the Busch and Truck Series teams only have a limited set of tires to use in a race as opposed to the Winston Cup Series? Survey says...
Good question. Cost. But a lot of us think that if if you signed in with your Cup car on Thursday and you could only get 9 sets of tires, that would be pretty wonderful too. Because it really does help control the cost quite a bit, and it still makes for really good racing.
And just to briefly explain it for folks that might not be familiar with it, the Busch Series teams are allowed a certain number of tires they can change under caution in a race. 2 sets or 3 sets of tires. You can change all you want under the green. Truck Series teams can change whatever they want under the green. They can only change 2 under caution, but they're given a certain number of sets of tires when they come in for the weekend, and that's all they can use, period.
Those are both ways. They use the Truck Series and the Busch Series to try to learn what might be an effective way to cut costs for even the Winston Cup cars. So you might see those rules come to Winston Cup one day, and I don't think that would be a bad deal. Like Schrader said, it gives them some, gives you some opportunities there to change things up a little bit.
How about Schrader in that last segment?
He was ready, wasn't he? He knew he hadn't seen the race. He didn't know anything about it. So whatever you said, he's making sure he just disagreed with it right off the bat.
He's like,
me.
It wasn't much of a race. Well, these guys are out there working their guts out.
And you're at the go-kart track.
We'll take a break.
Pretty
We'll
neat
come
go-kart
back
track.
next. Don't go away.
If you have a question for our drivers, mail it to us to Question of the Week, Post Office Box 240417, Charlotte, North Carolina 28224, or email us at speedvision.com. If we use your question, you'll receive a pair of Pelote driving shoes. Please specify blue or black and your shoe size. Pelote driving shoes you can wear all day.
It's a little after lunch, day 1. They keep coming down the road. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch here. We stopped. It's supposed to be Mikey Waltrip's mouth. No, it's the Grand Canyon. I always get them mixed up.
I bet you if you'd have known you were going to run me into the wall, you wouldn't have made that.
I didn't run you into the wall. You
Rude.
tried to pass me in a place that wasn't very good to try to pass.
Rude comment about my mouth.
This would be Ken Schrader as reporter. This time we gave him the camera to take on Kyle Petty's charity ride across America. Highlights next week.
Let me explain.
Oh, that wasn't it? There's more? I thought that was the whole deal.
Here's Schrader's report. Well, here they come. They're coming down the road. There's a bunch of them.
Hey, stop. I want
And
to tell you.
there's a bunch more.
Let me tell you what I'm doing this weekend. We got time?
Hey, better hurry.
Hurry up.
Friday night, Batesville, Arkansas, Mooney Star's new Mars Series, the Federated Dirt Late Model. Saturday night, Peevely, Missouri, Federated Dirt Late Model. That's a beautiful track. And Sunday, the Penda 300 Truck Accessories ARCA race at Anderson, Indiana, the Federated Auto Parts ARCA car.
And let me just say one thing on my behalf.
This will be good.
I really
What are you going to do, Johnny?
I'm taking this
Oh,
week
go.
off.
I'm sorry, Mike.
No, I was going to say, I really like having Nations Rent as a sponsor. I watched the race yesterday. I got my Nations Rent New Holland in-car camera. Commercial comes on, it's a cat renting something from Nations Rent on TV. I like it when sponsors are involved in sports, such as Federated Auto Parts.
Well,
They not
thank
only
you.
sponsor your Busch, your ARCA effort, but they're sponsoring races. It's a good bunch. Johnny, you're going to Germany. No, wait a minute, I am.
No, you are.
That's
You
right,
are.
you've
I'm
been to
staying
England.
home.
Tell
Went to
David
England.
hi.
I've stayed
Yeah,
home.
if I see John
You
Carlo
going
or
over there
Mika.
at F1 race? Going over there?
No.
No.
I didn't know they're having one.
Alan, is there anything you
They're
want to
not.
do?
It's a couple of weeks. I'm going to the Busch race in New Hampshire.
Oh, say hello to Teddy Christopher because he's going to be driving my Busch car, the Les Care Kitchen Chevrolet.
I hope he qualifies on the pole,
And you told him
too.
you don't care if he brings any fenders back as long as he brings the trophy.
Win, Teddy, win.
The trucks are racing in Memphis late Saturday afternoon. Earlier in the day, noontime, the Busch Series at New Hampshire International Speedway. We will review those races next Monday night. Schrader as reporter from the Kyle Petty Charity Ride.
7 o'clock Central is Peevely.
I knew you'd find
Local.
Local time. Well, it's Central.
We've survived another week. Assuming you've seen this. For them, I'm Alan. See you next time.
NASCAR Inside Winston Cup has been presented.